prohibisyon pagdating po sa pagkakaroon ng franchise. Kaya po, bubuksan na po natin ang pagtatanong at ang una pong magtatanong, the Chair now recognize Honorable Claudine Diana Bautista.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Mr. Chairman, in pursuant to our rules, especially in the Blue Ribbon Committee, may we ask all guests to take their oath before? Because I think last time Mr. Gabi Lopez wasn't present, and so do we administer the oath?
Thank you for the gentle reminder, Congressman Albano, Vice Chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee. Comsec and guest, may we direct the Comsec to give the oath and to swear in all the guests.
Please stand. Including the...
Mr. Chairman, continuing oath yung yung mga nag-swear nag-oath na dati, continuing oath na lang sila. Yung mga hindi pa lang na...
Yes, Congressman Remulla, also Vice Chairman of this committee. Yung mga bagong dating lang po.
Si Mr. Gabi Lopez at saka si Asek.
Namely, Mr. Gabi Lopez
Asek Aglipay.
and Asek Aglipay. And Yusek Emily Aglipay.
Sana may mic sila. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this joint congressional hearing? So help you God. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Comsec. Again, uulitin ko po, the Chair now recognize Congresswoman Honorable Claudine Diana Dindi Bautista. Paki-unmute po. Paki-unmute.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Before my interpellation, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a short manifestation.
Yes, you may, Congressman Dindi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to our chairperson of the Committee on Legislative Franchises, Chair Chicoy Alvarez. Good morning, Chair Jonathan C. Alvarado. To the members of this committee and the honorable members of the House of Representatives, our guests for today, good morning. The matter that this joint committee is about to tackle, the matter of legislative franchise of ABS-CBN, is undeniably of great importance. To some, the current issue is simply about ABS-CBN's 11,000 employees or the loss of their favorite programs. But while these must be taken into account, it is of utmost importance to consider other substantive issues raised in relation to ABS-CBN's franchise application and demand our scrutiny as lawmakers who are called upon to exercise the mandate and perform the responsibility given to us by the Filipino people. In the interest of fairness, we must hear ABS-CBN's arguments as well as the numerous allegations and issues being raised by those opposing ABS-CBN's application for a grant of franchise. It is the duty of this august chamber and the interest to conduct a thorough, fair, and transparent investigation into the allegations being levied against ABS-CBN. Hence, given the need to ensure a comprehensive, balanced, and orderly inquiry into the matter of ABS-CBN's franchise application, and as a member of both Committee on Legislative Franchise and Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, I would like to humbly but formally request to this joint committee that we only permit questions and inquiries entirely relevant to the subject matter to the extent that will allow a thorough presentation and appreciation of the evidence as our speaker promised. to this joint committee. Thank you, and may we all have a fruitful and productive committee meeting today.
Congresswoman Bautista, do you have any other questions?
No, that was just a manifestation, Mr. Chair. I'd like to proceed with the interpellation about the citizenship of our guest.
Please do so, Congresswoman Bautista.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, good morning, Mr. Lopez, and thank you for joining us in today's committee hearing.
Magandang umaga po, Representative Bautista, Speaker of the House Alan Cayetano, Majority Leader Martin Romualdez, Chairman of the two committees on Legislative Franchise, Chairman Alvarez, and Committee on Good Governance, Chairman Alvarado, members of both subcommittees, esteemed members of Congress, to our 11,000 employees, ang mga mamayan watching us throughout the country. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Maraming
Sir, good
salamat
morning.
po sa napakasarap na pagbati, Mr. Gabby Lopez. Pero ipapaalala lang po ng mga chairman ng joint committee na ito na please wait to be recognized bago po kayo magsasalita. At iyan po ay isa sa mga batas po ng committee ito. And always address the chairman sa pagtatanong at sa pagsagot. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Gabby Lopez. You may continue, Congresswoman Dindy Bautista.
Okay, Mr. Chair, my questions will be addressed to Mr. Gapi Lopez himself. Again, sir, good morning, and thank you for joining us in our hearing today. I just have a few questions with regards to the issue on your citizenship. Sir, before 2001, as an American citizen with a U.S. passport, have you traveled all over the world using this U.S. passport, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr.
Excuse
Chair,
me,
on these-
Congresswoman Bautista and Mr. Gabby Lopez, uulitin ko po, always address your inquiry to the chair, and before po kayo sasagot, bago po kayo sasagot, hintayin niyo po muna na kilalanin po kayo ng chairman. Please wait to be recognized first. Okay po? Tuloy na po tayo. Maraming salamat. Congresswoman Dindy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on these travels using your U.S. passport, you had to identify yourself as an American citizen in filling up immigration and customs form, right?
Mr. Lopez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, by the way, when you applied for a U.S. passport as an American citizen, did you ever indicate in your application that you were also claiming Philippine citizenship?
Mr. Lopez?
The immigration forms that I've had to fill out did not have a provision addressing that particular question about my multiple citizenship.
Congresswoman Bautista?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So from your answers, it appears to me that during this part of your life, when you were living in the U.S., you were born as an American citizen, studying in American schools. During this entire time, did you ever take the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance?
Mr. Lopez?
Your Honor, I did not.
Congresswoman Bautista?
Not even in the Pledge of Allegiance was part of school activities because, Mr. Chair, I remember, I studied here in the Philippines from elementary to high school and I remember from elementary to high school, after ng flag raising natin, di ba po, we raise our hand and we recite the Panatang Makabayan. So, I'd like to clarify with Mr. Lopez, did you partake in any of the activities that you had to do the same in the States?
Mr. Lopez?
Your Honor, I grew up in the Philippines and I went to grade school and high school in the Philippines. And I only went to college and my master's in America. When you go to college in America, it does not ask you to give an oath of allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Please continue, Congresswoman Bautista.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By the way, in your school records in the U.S., did you ever indicate that you are a citizen of the Philippines?
Mr. Lopez.
Yes, Your Honor. I applied to my college and to my master's as a Filipino citizen.
Congresswoman Bautista.
While you lived as an American citizen in the U.S., did you ever vote in the U.S. election?
Mr. Lopez.
Yes, Your Honor. I voted in 2016, the 2016 elections.
Congresswoman Bautista.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you came to the Philippines in 1986, you were still using your American passport, correct?
Yes, Your
Mr.
Honor.
Lopez.
Sorry.
Please continue, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, Your Honor. I did.
Congresswoman Bautista.
In fact, you first got your Philippine passport in 2001, correct?
Mr. Lopez.
Yes, Your Honor.
So whenever you traveled to the Philippines under your American passport from 1986 to 2001, what type of visa was stamped on your passport upon arrival?
Mr. Lopez.
If I recall correctly, it was a balikbayan status.
Congresswoman Bautista, you still have the floor continuously. Dire-diretso ka po. Huwag mo na
Alright,
po ako
thank you.
hintayin. Si Mr. Lopez lang
Alright.
po ang maghihintay to be recognized.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So are you aware that being given a balikbayan visa or a 30-day visa, these visas are intended to be given for non-Filipinos?
Mr. Lopez.
It was never brought to my attention, but it was one of the reasons, perhaps, that in 2001, I applied for a recognition of my Philippine citizenship.
Okay. So, incidentally, did the upper management of ABS-CBN know that you were using an American passport and had no Filipino passport when you assumed leadership of ABS-CBN in 1986?
Mr. Lopez.
Your Honor, it was not an issue that was raised during our management hearings.
So your submission showed that you filed a petition with the Bureau of Immigration in 2001 for recognition of Filipino citizenship. During this process, were you asked to fill up an alien fingerprinting form?
Mr. Lopez.
Your Honor, this was so long ago, I don't recall if I were filed or filled out an alien registration form. But perhaps my lawyers can answer that question. Your Honor, would they be given an opportunity to answer on my behalf? They have the details.
Yes,
Mr. Lopez.
the lawyer of Mr. Gabby Lopez is now recognized. Yung lawyer mo po ba, Sir Gabby, ay nakapag-take ng kanyang oath?
Ang lawyer ko po si Ayo Bautista, who is also our corporate lawyer. I think he is under a continuing oath.
Okay.
He's been a resource person for...
The lawyer of Mr. Gabby Lopez is now recognized. Please answer the question of Congresswoman Bautista.
Good morning po. Ano po uli yung tanong ninyo, Congressman Bautista?
Good morning, Attorney.
Hi, ma'am.
Sir, my question was, your submission showed that you filed a petition with the Bureau of Immigration in 2001 for recognition of Filipino citizenship. During this process, were you asked to fill up an alien fingerprinting form?
ABS-CBN?
Ko po. Sorry.
Yes, you're recognized.
Ang intindi ko po, hindi po ako sigurado, is that Mr. Lopez did file that alien form.
Okay. Okay, sir. So, were you, going back to Mr. Gabby Lopez, sir, were you advised to file this petition or did you find it necessary to do so yourself?
Yes, ABS-CBN.
Yes, Your Honor. It was in recognition of being a natural-born citizen that I took it upon myself to ask for recognition of my citizenship. My understanding from my lawyers was that I am a natural-born Filipino citizen because both my parents are Filipino citizens. But because I was not born in the Philippines, I did not have a Filipino birth certificate. So it behooved me to have a recognition by the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Immigration for whatever legal purposes I may use of that recognition po.
So, Mr. Lopez, is it correct in saying that this petition was indeed to settle issues regarding your citizenship, correct?
Mr. Lopez?
Opo, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. I read somewhere that after this process and after you got your Philippine passport in 2001, you still traveled using your US passport. And there were still instances when you traveled to the Philippines using your American passport. Do you confirm this, sir?
Before I recognize Mr. Gabby Lopez, paalala lang po kay Congresswoman Dindi Bautista na lumagpas na po tayo sa 3 minutes and if you can, please wrap up at maaari ka po naming ilista ulit dito
Alright.
sa bilang ng mga magtatanong, Congresswoman Bautista.
Okay,
Mr. Gabby Lopez?
Your Honor, if my law be recognized to speak out on this specific issue.
Yes, Attorney.
Salamat po. 2 punto po ang ni-raise ni Congressman Bautista tungkol sa citizenship ni Mr. Gabby Lopez. Una po, gumagamit siya ng US passport. Pangalawa, nag-file siya ng petition for recognition sa Bureau of Immigration. Doon po sa kaso ng Valles versus Comelec na dinicide ng Supreme Court on August 9, 2000, maliwanag po na sinabi ng Korte Suprema na ang paggamit ng alien or foreign passport ay hindi po indicative na isang tao po ay hindi Pilipino. Doon po sa kasong yon, sinabi po na yung respondent, private respondent, na by coincidence, ang pangalan din po niya ay Rosalind Ibasco Lopez. Sinabi po ni Valles na hindi siya Pilipino dahil number 1, she had an Australian passport, and number 2, she expressly renounced her Filipino citizenship when she declared under oath in her application for alien certificate of registration and immigrant certificate of residence that she was a citizen or subject of Australia. Dinismiss po itong kasong to ng Korte Suprema. In dismissing the case, the Supreme Court said, and I quote, "In order that citizenship may be lost by renunciation, such renunciation must be expressed." Sinight po ng Supreme Court ang Aznar versus Comelec at Mercado versus Manzano and Comelec. And I quote, "Thus, the mere fact that the private respondent, Rosalind Ibasco Lopez, was a holder of an Australian passport and an alien certificate of registration are not acts constituting an effective renunciation of citizenship and do not militate against her claim of Filipino citizenship. For renunciation to effectively result in the loss of citizenship, the same must be expressed." So, doon po sa punto na ginamit ni Mr. Lopez yung kanyang American passport, hindi po nagkakahulugan na hindi siya Pilipino. Pangalawa po, Congressman Bautista raised the petition of Mr. Gabby Lopez for recognition with the Bureau of Immigration which was subsequently affirmed by the Department of Justice. Yung pagpili niya sa kanyang letter request, as you admit, is a petition for recognition.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask the lawyer one question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Congressman Remulla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only question is he 100% Filipino or 100% American or 50% Filipino and 50% American?
Attorney?
He is po a dual citizen. Ang dual citizen po, si Mr. Gabi Lopez, dahil pinanganak siya, ang kanyang magulang ay Pilipino. Under the prevailing 1935 Constitution na umiiral nung siya ay
No,
pinanganak.
ano lang, very simple lang kasi, no? I don't want a long deliberation in this matter. I just want to know, if is he partly Filipino and partly American or half Filipino, half American? I don't want to dwell on the technicalities of what the Supreme Court says. I just want to know, for practical purposes, is he purely Filipino or is he partly Filipino? Or does he claim to have two citizenships?
He has a dual citizen
Attorney?
status po.
So
I'm
yung
sorry.
dual is, Mr. Chairman, dual citizenship means two citizenships means dual citizenship. Is that correct, Attorney
Attorney?
Bautista?
Opo, dalawa po ang citizenship
Okay,
na.
that's all I need to, Mr.
American
Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
citizen
Chairman.
And he's a Filipino citizen. Ito po kanyang pagiging Amerikano at Pilipino.
Mr.
ay
Chairman, the
purely-
question has been answered already.
Thank you, Congressman Remulla. Attorney, you can continue.
Opo, salamat po ng maran. Yung pagka-dual citizenship po ni Mr. Gabi Lopez ay automatic legal consequence dahil pinanganak po siya mula sa mga Pilipino and under our Constitution, jus sanguinis ay Pilipino siya. Pinanganak din po siya sa Amerika. Na alam po naman natin na pagka ikaw ay pinanganak sa teritoryo ng Amerika, ikaw ay American citizen dahil po yung kanilang doktrinang sinusunod ay jus soli. So from the moment of birth, without doing anything, without any overt act or choice, Mr. Lopez was automatically a Filipino citizen and an American citizen. Yung po ang tinatawag natin na dual citizen.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Vice Chairman Defensor.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, since Attorney Bautista already explained the constitutional provisions, the points as regards to citizenship, gusto ko lang po magtanong, Attorney Bautista, kasi in relation to what Congresswoman Bautista was asking, and then si Congressman Boying Remulla. Tama po kayo, no, na hindi naman po sadya na automatic naging citizen si Mr. Gabi Lopez. Pero ang kaibahan no ng 1935 Constitution at 1973 Constitution, and this is in relation dun po sa binanggit ni Congressman Boying Remulla, dati ho, sa 35 Constitution, pagka ang tatay mo Pilipino, Pilipino ka kaagad. Pagka ang nanay mo Pilipina, pag the age of majority, kailangan mo mag-elect ka to be a Filipino. Sa 1973 Constitution po, ganun din po ang sinabi, pagka ang ama mo, ang ina mo ay Pilipino, Pilipino ka kaagad. Dito po sa 1987 Constitution, ganun din ho. Pero may karagdagan. Ang nakadagdag po dito yung Section 5. Dual allegiance of citizens is inimical to the national interest and shall be dealt with by law. Article 4, Citizenship, Section 5. Binanggit ko po ito sa kadahilanan na noong 1991, gumawa po ang batas ang Kongreso na ang barangay captain, barangay kagawad, kahit ikaw pinanganak sa Amerika, bumalik ka rito, magulang mo Pilipino, you have to forgo of your Filipino citizenship. Kailangan mong tanggalin ang iyong pagka-Amerikano, iyong pagka-Chino, kung ikaw man ay Australiano, kailangan isa lang. And if I may quote the question of then Senator Enrile to Senator Pimentel. Senator Enrile, but precisely, Mr. President, the Constitution does not require an election. Under the Constitution, a person whose mother is a citizen of the Philippines is at birth a citizen without any overt act to claim the citizenship. Senator Pimentel, yes, what we are saying, Mr. President, is under the gentleman's example, if he does not renounce his other citizenship, then he is opening himself to question. So if he's really interested to run, the first thing he should do is to say in the certificate of candidacy that I am a Filipino citizen and I have only one citizenship. Pinasok ko po ito, may tanong po kay Mr. Lopez sana kanina, pero dahil nag-usap na po tayo sa konstitusyon, kung kami po nire-require barangay captain kagawad, isa lang, Pilipino ka lang, what more for a mass media company na ang pag-iisip ng bawat Pilipino ang pwede mong kontrolin, na ang kultura ng ating bansa ay meron kang kinalaman, na ang impormasyon na lumalabas ay pwede kang makialam. Isipin po natin, kung may isa man lang, hindi rin niya kasalanan, ipinganak sa China, half Chinese, half Filipino. Now we have the question of the West Philippine Sea. Can you imagine the situation of an owner of a broadcasting station in the Philippines, president of a broadcasting station of the Philippines, having been half or is half Filipino and half Chinese? That is why, if we require our kagawads, our barangay captains to be full Filipino citizenship, then I think it is also incumbent upon us to require those who will handle and own mass media to have full Filipino citizenship. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can I be given an opportunity to respond?
Purong Pilipinong Vice Chairman Mike Defensor. Sino po yung nagsalita?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Mr. Gabby
po.
Lopez, you're recognized.
Thank you po, Mr. Chairman. I think Congressman's Defensor's words are very well taken. I stand by my record over the last 35 years. I have been committed to the people of this country. It is a trust that has been passed on to me by my father and by his father before him. Gina Lopez is not an outlier in our family. She is part and parcel of the way our family thinks. We are, in fact, totally dedicated in the service of the Filipino. It is a trust that has been given to me. And in fact, I always tell our employees, dito sa ABS-CBN po, it is not just a job, it is a calling. So please, if you are going to look beyond the technicality and talk about allegiance, please look at my record over the last 35 years po.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, just a quick response. I'm not imputing any question on your allegiance. It was just a response to Attorney Bautista, who was giving a explanation on the Constitution. So that is why I also mentioned Section 5 of the Constitution on allegiance, not pertaining to you personally. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Defensor. The Chair would like to recognize now Congressman Edsel Lagman for his interpellation.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, si Ayo Bautista po, my lawyer, would like to make additional comments, please.
Attorney, you are recognized.
Salamat po. Binanggit po ni Congressman Defensor yung Section 5, Article 4 of the 1987 Constitution. Ang Section 5 po, ang nakalagay, dual allegiance of citizens is inimical to the national interest and shall be dealt with by law. Ito pong provision na to ay isinama sa 1987 Constitution ni Commissioner Blas F. Ople. In-explain po niya kung bakit niya gusto isama itong provision na to. And I quote, I want to draw attention to the fact that dual allegiance is not dual citizenship. Galing po yan kung sa mismong nag-propose ng provision na ito. And so, I do not question double citizenship at all. Sa Kulilang versus Datumano na dinicide po ng ating Korte Suprema, noong May 11, 2007,
Maganda na kayo magdebate para
sinabi po ng Korte Suprema na kailangan meron pong enabling law to implement the constitutional provision on dual allegiance. Kasi po, nakalagay sa Section 5 ng Constitution, shall be dealt with by law. Kaya sinabi po ng Korte Suprema, for us to implement a policy regarding dual allegiance, kailangan po may enabling law, may batas na ipasa ang Kongreso. Yung pong binanggit ni Congressman tungkol sa mga public
Mr.
officials,
Chairman.
Congressman Defensor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to Attorney Bautista, we also do our readings on all this, and I just like to say that yung po binanggit ni Constitutional Commissioner Blas Ople, sinabi na nga po doon, di ba, ang example niya yung mga in-check na
tama po yan.
opo, na pwede nilang isiphon yung money, ilagay sa Taiwan, ilagay sa Singapore, and it says here, dual allegiance is inimical to citizenship and should dealt with according to law. Alam naman po natin walang batas. Ang punto lang ho dito, dun ho sa later on, the law and the local government code, ang sinasabi na nga po, wag na tayong magkaroon ng dual citizenship kasi nga baka maapekto sa allegiance natin. Yun lang naman po, Attorney Bautista.
Salamat po.
Thank you. The Chair would like to recognize now Congressman Edsel Lagman. And then, para po mas mabilis na proceedings natin, pwede na pong direkta po tanungin diretso ni Congressman Lagman yung ating mga resource persons at pwede na pong dumiretso rin po ng sagot para mas mabilis po yung flow natin. Thank you. Congressman Lagman, you have the floor.
Honorable Chairman, most probably I will not ask extensive questions anymore because I submit that the allegation that former ABS-CBN President and Chairman Eugenio Lopez III is an American citizen is a non-issue because he is undeniably a natural-born Filipino citizen, having been born of a Filipino father and as well as a Filipino mother. No amount of interpellations would change this overriding and unalterable fact. The 1935 Constitution, which was in effect at the time of his birth in 1952, unequivocally provides that one whose father is a Filipino citizen acquires the citizenship of his father as a Filipino at birth. Let me just quote Section 1.3 of Article 4 of the Philippine Constitution of 1935, which is the one effective at the time of his birth. It says, the following are citizens of the Philippines. 3, those whose fathers are citizens of the Philippines. This cannot be altered by any interpolation. Now, Mr. Eugenio Lopez has not lost nor relinquished his Philippine citizenship at any point in time. All of the Philippine constitutions of 1935, 1973, and 1987 absolutely adopt the principle of jus sanguinis, or citizenship by blood relation. So that would put this issue at rest. But and then also, Attorney Bautista said that the possession and use of a foreign passport is not indicative of citizenship, and that is confirmed by relevant decisions of the Supreme Court. Just one question to Attorney Bautista. When Mr. Eugenio Lopez III applied for recognition of Philippine citizenship in 2001, was that absolutely necessary, or it was just to remove any cloud of doubt on his citizenship?
Pwede po,
Pwede ka na magsagot.
pwede po ako magsalita.
Please answer na po. Pwede, diretso na po.
Ay, salamat po. Yung pong recognition ng letter request ni Mr. Gabi Lopez ay isinasaad po yan sa batas. Hanapin ko lang po sandali ito. Doon po sa kaso ng Republic versus Hart na dinicide po ng Korte Suprema on June 13, 2016. Sinabi po dito ng Supreme Court ay as follows. As the agency tasked to provide immigration and naturalization regulatory services and implement laws governing citizenship and the admission and stay of aliens, the DOJ has the power to authorize the recognition of citizens of the Philippines. Pakiulit ko lang po yun. Ano? May poder po ang DOJ na mag-recognize ng mga citizens ng Pilipinas. Any individual, I'm quoting pa rin po sa desisyon, any individual born of a Filipino parent is a citizen of the Philippines and is entitled to be recognized as such. Recognition is accorded by the Bureau of Immigration and the Department of Justice to qualified individuals. Ngayon po, on April 15, 1999, ang Bureau of Immigration po, which is under the Department of Justice, issued instruction number RBR 99002. Under this law instruction of the Bureau of Immigration, nakalagay po na the remedy of filing of a petition for recognition by way of a letter request is available to dual citizens, gaya po ni Mr. Lopez, who wish to secure a categorical acknowledgement from the Philippine government of his Philippine citizenship status from birth for any legal purpose it may serve. So kahit ano po yung dahilan ninyo, basta it's for a legal purpose, pwede. Kaya nung nag-apply po si Mr. Lopez, letter request for a certificate of recognition ng kanyang Philippine citizenship, hindi masyado pong importante kung ano yung dahilan. Ang nakalagay lang po is, for any legal purpose it may serve. Ngayon, ito pong Bureau of Immigration Order na April 25, 2001, binigay sa kanya yung kanyang petition for recognition. Dito po, sinasabi mismo ni Secretary of Justice, then Secretary of Justice Perez, in his second endorsement, in-affirm pa niya that Mr. Lopez, and I quote, is a citizen of the Philippines pursuant to Section 13, Article 4 of the 1935 Constitution in relation to Section 1, Paragraph 2, Article 4 of the present 1987 Constitution. Maliwanag po na yung kanyang petition na letter request is merely for recognition. Inaamin naman po ng lahat na yung kanyang petition for recognition is a letter na 2 pahina lang. 2 pages lang po yun. Kaya paano po natin masasabi na he acquired Filipino citizenship by way of a 2-page letter? Alam po naman natin na ang Pilipino ay magiging Pilipino 2 paraan lang. Una, pinanganak siya sa kanyang magulang, nanay o tatay ay Pilipino. At pangalawa, through naturalization. Ito pong petition for recognition or letter request ay hindi po naturalization. Ang naturalization po ay ginagawa through a legislative act. Kayo pong mga congressmen, alam po ninyo to, Minsan po, may mga basketball player tayo na dayuhan, na-naturalize ninyo. Pero kailangan po legislative act. Naturalization is also effected through court proceedings or administrative proceedings, wherein may mahabang proseso po yan. Kaya maliwanag po na yung letter request for recognition ni Mr. Gabi Lopez ay hindi niya na-acquire ang kanyang citizenship through that. It was merely a recognition of his existing Filipino citizenship. Salamat po.
To make a long story short,
Yes, sir.
that certificate of recognition issued to Mr. Gabi Lopez is a confirmation
Opo.
he is a natural-born Filipino citizen. Is that correct?
Opo, ang nakalagay po ay confirmation at acknowledgement, hindi po grant.
Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you, Joint Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Lagman. The Chair would like to recognize now Congressman Rufus Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Please proceed po. Malinaw po, Kong Rufus.
Thank you, Chairman. So, our distinguished Chairman, Chairman Alvarado and Alvarez, good morning to all our resource persons and also to our distinguished colleagues. I would like to therefore start by stating that, I don't know if am I seen on the screen? Yes, okay. So, first of all, let me start by stating that under prevailing Philippine law, the following are the modes by which Philippine citizenship is acquired. The first one is by birth, that is jus sanguinis, law of blood or ancestry, or by naturalization, or by reacquisition under Republic Act 9225. Now, when Mr. Lopez was born in 1952, the prevailing constitutional provision was the 1935 Constitution, which clearly states that person whose father is a Filipino is a natural-born Filipino. Now also, he was also born in the United States, and under the principle of the law of the soil, jus soli, he is also a Filipino, he's also an American citizen. Now, since birth, he has been a Filipino citizen. My question to Mr. Lopez, good morning to you, Mr. Lopez, is that ever since you were born, did you had any act express renunciation of your Philippine citizenship?
Mr. Lopez, pwede na po kayo sumagot diretso.
Magandang umaga po, Kong Rodriguez. Thank you for your question. Could you please repeat it? Matanda na ako. I'm having a senior moment.
Yes, I have stated that since your birth, according to the 1935 Constitution, you were born as a natural-born Filipino. My question is, did you, in any time after your birth up to now, did you commit any act, did you do any act of express renunciation of your Philippine citizenship?
Your Honor, I did not.
Thank you. Also, it is also clear that you were able to also get a certificate of recognition. And precisely the mention of RBR circular in the Bureau of Immigration, RBR is Rufus B. Rodriguez. When I was Commissioner of Bureau of Immigration, and certainly even dual citizens clearly can apply for recognition. And when you applied for recognition, does it mean that you were merely trying to get that certificate of recognition because that is a requirement to get a passport because when you were born in the States, your parents did not get a Philippine passport when you were there. Is that correct?
Opo, Your Honor.
Yes, because precisely to solve issues of those who were born in the States but were not able to get passports there from the Philippines, because you get an American passport and then you bring the child, as what I did with my daughter, and bring her to the bureau, to the consulate of the Philippines, and got in the New York a Philippine passport. But for those who failed to get, like in your case, your parents were not able to get from the Philippine embassy a passport, then when you arrive in the Philippines, then you get a passport. So that circular was precisely to make sure that you get a recognition first before there can be a grant of the Philippine passport. So that is clear that it is for recognition purposes to get the Philippine passport. And many have done that when I was in immigration, and we took the only requirement for that recognition is that your birth certificate stating your parents are Filipinos. Now, you were also
Kung
asked...
Rufus, sorry po, kung Rufus, reminder na po, last question na po, 3 minutes na po tayo.
Okay. Yes. So, in this particular case, in your case, we should not confuse Republic Act 9225. 9225 is the reacquisition. These are people who lost by renunciation of Philippine citizenship when they apply, for example, the United States citizenship. They renounce it, but then we have a law in 2003 that allows those who even renounce them to be able to get Philippine citizenship back. And that is why this 9225 is practically an answer to the provision on the inimical to public interest, which will be dealt with law. And our law has precisely now has discarded this inimical dual allegiance and citizenship by having this law that allows even those who have lost citizenship by naturalization in another country get this back. So my last question is this: when you were traveling, because that was also asked, you used U.S. passport, and of course you are also aware that there is RBR, my circular, that when a person is dual, travels abroad, our immigration people will require that you bring your two passports. When you go to the United States with a Philippine passport, you have to show to Philippine immigration that you have a Philippine passport to show that you are not overstaying in the Philippines. And when you use a Philippine passport going to the U.S., you have to bring your American passport to show you don't need to have a visa in your Philippine passport because you are a U.S. citizen. Is that what happened to you, President Mr. Gabi Lopez?
Opo, I always bring both passports when I travel.
Yes, and that is because of RBR circular that requires that. With that, Mr. Chairman, let me finish by stating that Mr. Lopez, from the very, very beginning, by birth, is a Filipino, no renunciation, has been able to exercise the rights of Philippine citizenship, and being Filipino, Mr. Lopez may own a part of and also participate in the management of a mass media company in conformity with the Philippine Constitution. Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. Thank you, distinguished colleagues, and our dear chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if my lawyer could be given an opportunity to make additional insights.
One brief lang po, response lang po, Mr. Lopez, galing po kay
Salamat
attorney.
po.
Thank you. Attorney Bautista, brief response lang po.
Salamat po. Iniintay ko po kasi ma-unmute ako eh. Anyway, binanggit po ni Kong Rodriguez yung 9225. Related po ito dun si tinanong ni Congressman Defensor kanina eh, tungkol dun sa dual allegiance. Ang nakalagay kasi nga doon, if I may repeat, is dual allegiance of citizens is inimical to the national interest and shall be dealt with by law. Ang 9225 po ay pinasa ng Kongreso para may paraan po ang mga Pilipino na bawi yung kanilang dual citizenship. Under 9225, kung ikaw ay Pilipino, pinanganak ang Pilipino, pagkatapos na naturalize ka sa ibang bayan, nire-renounce mo yung pagka-Pilipino mo at magiging citizen ka nung bayan na nag-naturalize sa inyo. Now, under 9225, pinapayagan ka nabawiin yung iyong pagka-Pilipino. In other words, under that law, you can apply to become a Filipino once again and thereby have two citizenships, dual citizenships. Kaya po itong batas na binanggit ni Kong Rodriguez, 1925, bolsters our argument na hindi po ang pagbabawal sa dual citizen. Yung binanggit po ni Congressman, again, I'm having a serious moment, ay mga kaso po for public officers. Yung po mga tumatakbo for public office. Kaya po binanggit niya mga barangay, tsaka mga congressman. Pero wala pong enabling law with respect to ordinary citizens. Salamat po.
Thank you, Attorney. The Chair would like to recognize now, for his interpellation, Congressman Alfredo Garbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The established facts, Mr. Chair, is that based on records, Mr. Lopez was born to a Filipino parents, Emmanuel Lopez Jr. and Conchita Lau Lopez on October 12, 1952 in Massachusetts, USA. Recognizing a situation in which a Filipino citizen may, without performing any act and as an involuntary consequence of the conflicting of laws of different countries, be also as citizens of another state, it is called the principle of husuli and the principle of hus sanguinis. As I have said earlier, Mr. Chair, the established facts is that Mr. Gabi Lopez was born of Filipino parents in 1952. And the constitution that governed during the time of his birth is the 1935 Constitution. The 1935 Constitution states that if you're born of Filipino father, you are considered as a natural-born Filipino. That is based on the principle of hus sanguinis. He was also born in the United States, and that is an involuntary consequence of conflicting laws wherein, by virtue of his place of birth, he was also considered as an American citizen. Now, our present Constitution does not speak of half Filipino, half American. Ang sinasaad ho sa ating saligang batas ngayon, whether you are a natural-born Filipino or you are naturalized Filipino citizen. Kanina ho, maraming nagtatanong, while he was already here in the Philippines, he still used and continued to use his Philippine passport. Let me just confirm it to Mr. Gabi Lopez. Sir, patuloy ho ba kayong gumamit ng inyong American passport even beyond your issuance of recognition by the Department of Justice?
Magandang umaga po, Kong Garbin. Opo, I use both passports when I travel po.
But in the Constitution, it says that there are ways para mawala o ma-reacquire ang citizenship. Unang-una ho, ang tanong ko sa inyo, Mr. Gabi Lopez, nag-apply ho ba kayo ng naturalization in a foreign country?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Did you ever express renunciation of your Philippine citizenship?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Did you subscribe to an oath of allegiance to support the Constitution and laws of foreign countries?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Did you render service or accept commission in the armed forces of a foreign country?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Where your Philippine citizenship was canceled by any court?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Or where your Philippine citizenship was declared invalid by a competent authority?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Kasi ho, base ho sa mga desisyon ng Korte Suprema, Na-mention na rin ho ni Attorney Bautista kanina, in the case of Asnar, the court ruled that the mere fact that respondent Osmeña was a holder of a certificate stating that he is an American did not mean that he is no longer a Filipino. And that an application for an alien certificate of registration was not tantamount to renunciation of his Philippine citizenship. In the same way, in Mercado versus Manzano and Comelec, it was held that the fact that respondent Manzano was registered as an American citizen in the Bureau of Immigration and Deportation, he was holding an American passport on April 22, 1997, only a year before he filed the certificate of candidacy for Vice Mayor of Makati, were just assertions of his American nationality before termination of his American citizenship. Also in the case of Valles versus Comelec, GR number 13700, August 9, 2000, the mere fact that private respondent Rosalinda Ibasco Lopez was a holder of an Australian passport and had an alien certificate of registration are not acts constituting an effective renunciation of citizenship and do not militate against her claim of Filipino citizenship. For renunciation to be effectively result in the loss of citizenship, the same must be expressed. Yun nga ho, tinatanong ko kanina si Mr. Gabby Lopez, kasi ang sinasabi ho ng Korte Suprema, for renunciation to effectively result in the loss of citizenship, the same must be expressed. And those are the express acts provided under the Constitution in which kung ikaw nag-apply ng naturalization in a foreign country, or you expressly renounce your Philippine citizenship, or subscribe to an oath of allegiance in other country or foreign country, these are express acts as mentioned by the Supreme Court. So ito po yung mga bagay-bagay na dapat nating ikonsidera. Ang tanong ho, kasi yung Constitution natin nagsasabi, Article 16, 1987 of the Constitution, Section 11 states, the ownership and management of mass media shall be limited to citizens of the Philippines. Ang tanong ho ba? Kasi undeniably, Gabby Lopez is a natural-born citizen. But he is also an American citizen by virtue of a usually principle applied in American law. Ang tanong ho ba, whether a dual citizen can own a mass media company. Salamat po. Magandang umaga.